So I'm getting ready to basically release the social media scheduler app onto the Google Play Store. There's a lot that I still have to do when it comes to releasing, and I've kind of discussed some of that stuff in some of my live streams before. But specifically today, I wanted to discuss something that I thought was interesting when I was looking through like the best social media scheduler apps that are out on the Google Play Store. There's one that's called Buffer. It's the main one that I first see when I first go searching for social media scheduler apps. And as I'm looking through this, it has 4.5 stars, over 53,000 reviews, and it looks good. Don't get me wrong. Like this, you can tell right here, this looks like Figma, you know, how they set this up for ads and stuff like that. And the way their stuff looks is better than the social media scheduler app. Like I can't complain on that at all. It looks really good. I'm not going to try to make the app be something like this. However, one of the things I did notice were some of the reviews. When I would scroll down to the reviews and I went to the first one that was the most recent at this point in time, they were talking about the fact that you can't basically add a thumbnail for your different social media providers. They were saying that you basically can't add thumbnails for your social media providers. There's like a default one, but that's not close to being accurate. So you can't make like custom thumbnails added into the application that would go to those social media providers. And they were saying that they might as well just go onto the actual app to be able to do the thumbnail because they already have to do that anyway, right? And I was like, this issue here of not being able to add your thumbnail, I already know I can do that, right? Like I was already checking the YouTube API and already knew you could add thumbnails. So for me, I wasn't necessarily worried about it. It was just about time restraints, right? Like this is a company, like they hired people and paid people. I mean, I assume most likely it could be just one person, but if I click on Buffer Inc. In particular, I believe that that's a full company on their own that handles everything. Like, yeah, see, we go to their blog. I've actually logged in. I've checked out how their app works in particular, and I actually do like it. Don't get me wrong. However, it does cost money to use. As we can see here, you got the free 5 and 10. So just from reading this person's review, I knew that this is something that I could add to my social media scheduler, which would make it actually useful, like to actually real people. And there was another review that I saw here. He basically speaks about multiple different things, but the two things that I thought were interesting that I knew I could add for my own app was the tags issue that the person was having, as well as the wrong category issue, right? So like when you're doing tags, I guess that like it wasn't saving or it wasn't adding them properly, right? So I figured I would be able to do that for YouTube and maybe some other sources as well. And then the second thing is the categories. Now he's saying that the wrong category shows up for shorts, and he's not sure if that's something that he could set a default for, right? Now in YouTube, you can control this with the API. In particular, you have to know the IDs that correspond with which category types, so that you can be able to choose that specific category and then be able to use that along with your API request. So I figured these reviews that I saw here were going to be awesome to be able to integrate into the social media scheduler app, because it would only take about, I would say, 2 days on and off to really get them done. So the first set of changes that I want to talk about is in the app TypeScript file. It's just the main entry point of the application. I basically added new use effect states to be able to be used essentially for the category, the thumbnail, and the tags. A lot of that stuff was already built out somewhat. I just didn't actually prioritize incorporating any of it. So some of that was already there. Like for example, the category stuff was somewhat there and the YouTube tags. However, thumbnails was not. And also the option for is made for kids. I realized that even though the reviews for Buffer weren't asking for this, I actually realized that if you needed to post to YouTube and you wanted it to be perfect and published actually on YouTube with public on it, that you're gonna need to set that flag. Without setting that flag, it's not going to be public at all, even if you set it public. So that part is super important. So I figured I'd add that in. And since I'm not using any reactive state management with React Native, I'm using drill propping. It's not the best in my opinion. There are other better ways to manage reactive state throughout multiple files. But for this, I just have it where you're doing drill propping. So essentially those use effect states that I was talking about, I'm basically inserting them into the modals container component. Now the modals container component houses multiple different things that could be used together. One of them is the post modal. This post modal is where we're going to be going and posting content. So when I go onto the phone here and I click on this, it's going to bring up this window, and we're going to need to interact with this in order to be able to set up things like thumbnail and X, Y, and Z. Now there's another part of the post modal that comes with the function where if you actually hit one post, or you're actually confirming a post, we have this section of code here that basically will actually save everything to the database to then be stored and then be later used for posting your content to the selected social media providers that you wanted. So in the post file helper, in the handle post that we had, we added in those extra variables again. Is made for kids, thumbnail, YouTube category, the tags, right? And then from there, this is when we actually insert this information into the database that will house that stuff along with the content that we had before. And now since you're inserting those things into the database, I had to make sure those columns exist, right? So now when you first start up the application fresh and you don't have any actual previous information, it's now going to create the content table, but with those extra columns that we need: category, the thumbnail, path, and if the boolean for is made for kids is true or false. And so these are the post modal changes, which again affects this page here. And this would be all the UI changes as well as reactive management changes that needed to be done. I had made out a YouTube's categories list based off the information that I had found on the internet. It basically gives you all the IDs of all the category types. So therefore you could be able to set it up right in the post modal, so you have just a static list here. I also set up some component use effect states that basically change whether or not you could set the thumbnail as far as visually, right? So if we're in this page here, if you set on or off, you notice that that little section of showing the thumbnail, whether it's on or off, is going to show up or not, and that's based off of this use effect. It's the same with the other use effect for set show category picker. So let's say if I set a video here and I go to import, and then I go for YouTube, right, just to have YouTube only, and then from here you can see YouTube category. I can then set out any of these here, and that here where it says show category picker is what handles showing this visual here of the drop down. And this section here is basically the new code that makes it so that if you have YouTube, LinkedIn, or Instagram, that you have an option of being able to upload a thumbnail along with your video content if it is a video. I also added in the toggle for made for kids. It's set for default off, which is awesome. So that means that as long as you just send your content, it'll naturally take care of that flag for is made for kids or not. And the only thing you need to do is just enable on if you wanted it made for kids. This is where I put in the tags as well. So then you can add in your YouTube tags, and that's going to be added to the YouTube post as well. This leaves us with the final files, which is the API handler along with the social media providers that were affected in this change. When you first fetch, you have a list of content that you want pushed, and this will be like the list, and it will for loop through to see what providers need to actually be pushed for whatever content that you want posted right now. When you're posting for LinkedIn, I had made it so that you would check if there was a thumbnail path from the thumbnail information that you would get from the content in your database in the for loop. And if that is the case, I would set it in the payload. Funny enough, I technically already was set up to already be able to push thumbnails. I just needed to then make the flag that says that you want to upload a thumbnail. And if you do that, then in return, it's going to be able to actually allow you to push out a thumbnail with the URL content. For the Instagram's case, it was a little bit more complicated. If you've been following along with how annoying Instagram or Meta is in general, you would know that I need to be able to actually push the content to a public URL. They won't take your content from your device, so it makes it so that it's a lot harder to be able to have an open source application that is able to manage this. I talked about that in another video, but because of that, I had to use that same setup, right? Where essentially I needed to upload the thumbnail to this same temporary website where it stores your information for about an hour before it gets deleted. And then from there, I'll be able to have this thumbnail response string that I can be able to use along with the request when I actually create the container for Instagram to be able to make my video with a thumbnail. Oddly, what's funny enough is that the meta TS file that handles the content for Instagram and Threads actually didn't need any changes at all. Most of the stuff was actually built already for thumbnails, and that's because I had actually wrote out this code in Python about 2 or 3 years ago, and I had did a refactor into TypeScript about 5 or 6 months ago. And so it already came with the ability to actually be able to push out thumbnails. I just didn't have anything that was able to really test that or actually integrate that with the rest of this React Native application. And the last but most important case, in my opinion, is YouTube. The main changes that we did here was just adding in the parameters. Because of the fact that tags is actually just a string with commas in it. I didn't do anything fancy because it's just a SQLite database. I have to then actually convert that string into an array based off of the commas. From there, I could be able to then change up the snippet so that this time it's using title, description, your category ID that you had chose, and any tags that you had chose as well. I also made it so that you can again add in that Boolean for whether or not you wanted it made for kids or not. But we're not done. Unlike the other social media providers, YouTube actually requires that you set the actual thumbnail using a different API call. So the moment that you're done with your first API call, you actually need that information so that you can be able to set the thumbnail. And that's what I did here at the bottom of this whole function for uploading the video to YouTube. After it's pushed and after everything's okay, then from here I check if I have a thumbnail path. If that is the case, then I use the set thumbnail function, which is just down here, that basically then takes the video ID and is able to make a post request that shows that it's an image JPEG, and I send up the information straight from the phone for that image. And so those are basically all the main changes that needed to be done so that you can have thumbnails for YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as being able to set the categories for YouTube and being able to integrate tags into the social media providers. So that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you liked this video, please leave a thumbs up and please subscribe. If you have any comments, concerns, or questions, please leave them in the comments below, as I love to interact with everyone. And other than that, I hope the rest of your day goes well. Peace, everyone.